Just to let you know what we're going to be running through in this session, we'll be going through a bit about what the publishing process is and including peer review. We'll also talk about open access and its benefits, how you actually do open access, a little bit on choosing publications, and a bit on how open access relates to something called open research. So I think it's always worth you knowing who is giving you this advice. So I'm an open access librarian. I also have a background as an interdisciplinary arts and humanities researcher. So I've done practice research, but I've also written publications, journal articles, book chapters, a monograph, and I've got a couple of edited collections.
Sorry, Kate, somehow you've gone on mute. Not sure what happened there. You just unmute. There we go.
Sorry about that. Let me start again. My apologies. I think that might have been when I started sharing for some strange reason. So did you hear any of that at all or not?
We heard most of that, to be honest, yeah.
Oh, okay. That was very strange. I don't know why that happened then. Yes, in terms of who is giving you advice, I do have a background having done a reasonable amount of publishing, but it does come from my perspective of being in that kind of discipline. So in terms of how the different routes to publishing that I feel are common, you might find that you get invited to write a publication. That might be connected to your general reputation. If you're an early career researcher or postgraduate researcher, that might come because you've presented a conference paper. So you might get that invitation direct from maybe a book editor or from somebody who is has got a call out.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
You might also be submitting an abstract or call for papers. And if that happens, then you'll have to submit that abstract, and they'll make a decision on whether they want to include you in that special issue or that edited book. And another process which is very common is when you sort of cold submit to a journal. And on that basis, you then you should make sure you're following all of the author guidelines, that you have read articles to make sure that your work fits, and on that basis, you will then have they'll make a decision on whether they want to include your article in that journal. So it's worth thinking that process, it's much more likely that you're going to be accepted if it's been on the basis of your reputation, you've been invited, than if you cold submit to a journal. So that's also something worth thinking about, how you feel about that process. So don't be disheartened if the first time you cold submit, you're not successful. To give you a little bit of a sense of what the process looks like, because when I was publishing, this is something that wasn't really outlined to me. It was something that you just sort of expected to learn. So initially you will submit to the journal, you'll receive peer review or editorial feedback, you'll incorporate those changes and justify them to the editor, and then you will hopefully be accepted. It will then be copy edited, typeset. There'll be an online publication, and at some point in the future, if that journal has a print publication, it will be put in the print publication. So it can be quite a long process, and it can be a process which you keep on thinking the first time that you've done it, that you're further along than you are. Sometimes that acceptance takes a few times for the article to be pinged back to you before it does actually happen. So again, just accept that that's part of the process. There are certain terms that we use about the different documents that are created. So you have your submitted version, and you have your author accepted manuscript version, which is once you've incorporated all of those changes, it's been through peer review, but it's prior to copy editing and typesetting. And in the open access world, that author accepted manuscript is a very important document. And we'll come back to that and why that's an important document. And then you have your version of record, which is the online publication version. And that's also quite a significant one in the open access world too. So in terms of, I thought it might be helpful to just give a few tips that that I have around writing your work, because it is for a journal article, because it is a slightly different ask than writing a thesis chapter. It's worth thinking, what is your hook or your so what? I think that there is a difference between a document that's for examination and a document that's actually for publication, because your examiner has to read your document, whereas somebody who's just sitting down to read your article could choose to do anything else at any time. So think about engaging them. Introduce a really clear gap that you're filling with your research, and own your expertise. Think about what you need to keep rather than including everything. So make sure it's really pertinent to your argument. I also think it's really helpful to talk to your friends about your research. I found through talking to friends in slightly different fields, it's helped me understand what's interesting in my research on a slightly broader level. So make sure that you do that. And also think about getting feedback on drafts from friends and also your supervisor. And make sure that, again, the advice I gave before, you follow the submission guidelines of the journal or of the book series, to make sure that you're following the right referencing format. Those little things really really help a lot in terms of making it more likely that your work's going to have a smooth process. I would also, I've written a blog post about my experience of turning my thesis into a book, so you will be able to find a link to that on the slides if they're circulated. So peer review. It's worth saying peer review is something where you need to prepare yourself, because you'll often find, and it is a meme, you'll often find that reviewer one is lovely. They love your work. It's fantastic. It should be done. And then reviewer two, they're not the friendliest person in the world. They rip it to shreds, and you can feel really demoralized about it. And it's worth saying that the reason why that is, it's something that we're often familiar with. Online, anonymous feedback sometimes means that people aren't always the kindest in the world. So I have a few tips on dealing with reviewer two. So it's worth remembering it is feedback, not a demand. Changes are choices, but you have to actually justify them. You can also make the choice to submit elsewhere. And personally, I did do this on one particular situation, and it was the best thing for the article itself. So I'd gone with a really highly rated journal, and then I got the feedback. The feedback that they wanted would have been to completely change the foundations of the article. That wasn't appropriate. So I decided to publish elsewhere, got the most amazing feedback, which helped me make connections, because there was an incredibly generous reviewer one, and that then made the article so much better. So I can really recommend that you think about what's good for the work, not just the pressure for publication. And it is that thing, as I said, anonymity can encourage bad behaviour from those peer reviewing, but it can also teach you. There are also elements in which that the review can teach you where you may have somebody's misinterpreted something, so it can help you to sharpen sentences. So in light of that, it might be useful to maybe read it once quickly, and then read it properly a few days later with a friend. Maybe if it's the first time that you're actually doing it, sorry, read it quickly, and then a few days later read it once that's been able to sink in. But if it's the first time that you're going through this process, it might be useful to actually have a friend sit and read the feedback with you. Just think about looking after yourself in the process, and also think about what it's like to experience peer review when you come to be a peer reviewer too. So there have been times where I've had to say that I don't think an article's ready, but I've always tried to think about how I can offer that with kindness and constructive criticism so that I don't end up being a really nasty reviewer too. So I think that's a really important thing to think about. So actually, does anybody have any questions at this stage? Just have any come in through through at all, Jonathan?
None that have come through yet.
Okay, sure. I will just crack on then. So another thing to think about is when you're publishing is, are you wanting to include any third-party materials in your writing? If that's the case, then you need to think about trying to get that cleared quite early, because it can take a while, particularly if you're maybe getting that from an archive. Oh, sorry, there is a question there. So what if it is of sorry, I didn't quite catch that question. What was that?
What if it is obvious that the reviewers did not read the paper thoroughly?
I mean, I think sometimes that can indicate that you might still need to sharpen some of your expression, I think, because people read things in different ways, and it can just, I mean, you can push back, as I say, you can say, I don't think the reviewer has understood this aspect, but I think that would still be an indication that you might need to, oh, they missed a whole table. Well, I think you can just say that, to be honest. You can put that into your response to the editor and say, look, they appear to have not read this. If they had, then they should have understood this. I think that's absolutely fair enough to do, because your editor should be working with you to some extent on that. I'll move on to the third-party materials. So in terms of third-party materials, make sure that you approach people in good time. It's worth saying that in order to include materials in articles, that it may incur a fee, so it's worth understanding that's the case. I tend to think that it tends to work on 3 different levels. So you've got the image permission. Oh, was it not on the third-party materials slide?
On my side, it's coming up. It's still the reviewer 1 and 2 slides.
Oh, that's
I don't know if it's the same for anyone
weird.
else.
It's the same here, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the same.
strange. Oh, I'm so sorry. Right.
My
Something-
slides actually say routes to publishing articles.
Huh. Okay.
There seems to be
I'm
some
going to-
new clever Teams function at the bottom of the screen. So I'm getting an option to navigate forward and backwards on the slides and to sync to the presenter.
Oh, you're right. I think I must have accidentally clicked that. I've clicked now on the live view. So now I've got tips dealing with Reviewer 2. Thank you.
Okay, you've got tips of dealing with Reviewer 2. Okay, it should be on third-party materials. Okay, this is interesting. I'm going to stop sharing and reshare, I think. So I'm apologies for...
I think, can other people navigate forwards and backwards by using the little arrows that appear just below the slides?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Right, let me...
So perhaps, Kate, if you just keep going.
I keep going. But
let
the
us
thing is,
know which slide you'd like us to be on. We'll try and sync it all
this
up
is
that
going to
way.
be fun. Sorry, guys. Actually, let me just, because actually I realised my shares come off. So let me try.
If you click take control, it should let you go back and grab them.
Right, I'm gonna go to present in Teams again, and let's just start seeing if this will work. Okay, right. So bear with me, guys. I'm sorry about that. Right, okay. Are we now on third-party materials?
Yes, we are.
We are. Okay, excellent. I don't know quite what happened there, but we will continue. So yes, it's worth thinking that, you know, the way I think about third-party materials is that you need to kind of clear in across three different areas. One of them for many types of image won't be relevant, but essentially you have to clear the image permission and the copyright. So for instance, if you took a picture of something yourself, you are the creator, you own the copyright of the picture, of the photograph, that is. And then if it comes from an archive, you need permission from the archive who have created that image to actually be able to, or that scan, to be able to reproduce it. But that doesn't cover the copyright of the creation itself. So you need to follow the country of origin copyright law. So often in the UK and Europe, it's often 70 years from the death of the creator. But it's worth having a look on the government website around UK copyright law, and that will give you more information. If you can't find out who the copyright owner is, then it can sometimes be considered an orphan. So if it's an orphan, the thing to do is to keep records of your due diligence. And if you can't find out who owns the copyright on it, then at that point, you can often claim it as an orphan. And that means that you're able to include it, but you have to be sure that you've done that due diligence. And you can ask advice from the archive that you might have got the image from, or from librarians in most universities, and they'll be able to help you get a little bit of a sense and make sure that you followed that due diligence. So in terms of if a picture is open source online, then provided it's got something like a Creative Commons license, then, which we'll be getting onto Creative Commons license in a minute, then you can actually you can use it and be satisfied that it's fine for you to use that image, or that audio recording, or whatever it happens to be. Now, I came across something in my research which meant that some of the images I had that there was a trademark. So in my case, it was Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, because my background was a circus researcher. They had The Greatest Show on Earth, which is a trademarked image. So if you have something that's likely to be a trademark, you need to approach the organisation who own that trademark to find out if you can actually use that image. So in my case, that was Feld Entertainment, and they were more than happy to permit me to use that image, and they actually allowed it at no cost. So it's worth just saying that that is also relevant to your thesis too when you go to put that up online. There is more that can be covered by criticism and review, which is an exemption under UK copyright law, but that means you have to be subjecting that image to analysis in the text. It can't just be a descriptive or illustrative image. You have to really be unpicking it. Often for theses, organisations will waive the fees because they understand it's for an examination process, and that it's going to put open access online under that kind of non-commercial usage. So, but I think of like doing it, making sure that you followed this when you put your thesis up online, and you've kind of made sure that you've done your work in getting everything cleared. It's an opportunity to try out clearance as an academic practice. So I'd really recommend you to do that. And I did that myself with my thesis. So my thesis has all of its images, and they were all cleared prior to being put up online, because I wanted, those images were so central to the arguments that I was making that it felt really important. So that's really the kind of the nuts and bolts of my feelings of how to on publishing. Are there any other sort of questions that have come through at all?
No questions
Okay.
yet. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so in terms of what is open access, open access is free, unrestricted online access to research outputs. And for me, very much, it's worth thinking about what is the point of making of doing research if you make it inaccessible. So that's one of the really central tenets, I think, of open access. And for me, it really supports the academic project because you have to build on research that's gone before you. So what do you do if you should be putting it out into the world so that other people can build on your research and create new knowledge. So there's a big question about who is barred access. And in terms of who is barred access, if it's not an open access publication, you'll find practitioners, teachers, journalists and interested publics. So in my case, it might be an aerial performer who performs on trapeze and silks, who wants to know about the history of the form that they are practicing. Or it might be a family historian who had somebody in their past who had that as a profession. Researchers at less well-funded institutions may also not have access. So that may be UK based, or it may also be globally. So in lower economic countries, you will find that that people will have access to less subscriptions than maybe they would do in the UK. But obviously that does vary from institution to institution. That will include in the institutions who are on this call as well. Also independent researchers may not have access. So I myself have been through a period of being an independent researcher. It's an interesting situation where you're not able to, you're in a special issue, but you're not able to read the other articles within that special issue. That does happen. So if you want to have your work talking to other people's work, it's a really good idea to get behind open access. So why publish open access? It's part of positive research culture. There are a lot of initiatives which we'll go on to, which are about how openness can support research rigor and transparency and quality, and how it can be really helpful. But it's also, from an ethical point of view, about it's a decolonial practice, really, because communities should have access about their work about them or their histories. And it's decolonial in ensuring that people in other parts of the world, as I said a moment ago, are able to read as much research as possible. And it supports that disability studies ethos of no research about us without us as well. A lot of funders require it because they understand it to be a really good thing to have as much publicly funded work out in the public domain as possible. And REF requires it. Now, it's worth saying that if you are a postgraduate researcher, if it's a sole authored publication, it is exempt from REF. And that is because REF has had negative connotations on people's careers historically, although Research England are trying to look at some of the unintended consequences of previous REF exercises. So if you're not familiar with the research excellence framework, it is a process that happens every 8 years of assessing research at different institutions, and that leads to funding to the institutions. So that can put pressure on people, and Research England have acknowledged that that's not a good thing for PGRs to be dealing with. So if it's sole authored PGR research, then it's exempt from open access. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't want to do it as well. Unis also require it and have policies, and a lot of the time those policies are designed to help researchers understand what's going to help them meet REF requirements and also their funder requirements. So what are the benefits of open access? It can lead to increased citations, because obviously the work is being read by more people, and that can also lead to a higher profile to the work, and can lead to unexpected collaborations because people could come across your work more easily. And this is not just me saying this is actually also supported by research that's been done by information professionals. Funders also look for really good open research practices, and open access is an open research practice. So they're really looking for, you know, if you're committed to open access, that's seen as a positive thing for your career as well. So what are the different types of open access? Because it can get confusing, and I'll go into each of these in a little bit more detail, but this will just provide you a very quick overview before I go into more detail. So green open access is where it is free to read on your institutional repository. Now, I'm at the University of Bristol, so our repository is called Pure, but you know, ePrints is another name of one of the repositories. So you may find different terms used for the institutional repository. So it's where you self-archive a version of the work. And the version that it is the author-accepted manuscript, which is that version prior to copy editing and typesetting, but before but after peer review. So if you remember that on the slide earlier, that was one that I explained there. Gold open access is free to read, but you have to pay the publisher. So that may be via an open access deal or an individual charge. So the way I think of gold is as shiny and expensive. Because some people think of it as the gold standard, but that's actually slightly how to say it. It's the same content in green open access. It's been given a little bit more finessing. A hybrid journal is where you find a mix of free and paywalled material alongside. So it's where you find an open access article alongside a paywalled article. So the way to get open access with a hybrid journal is either for it to be paid for via that deal, or for it to be self-archived onto an institutional repository. And then there is every open access librarians love, which is diamond open access, where it is free to read and free for anybody to publish. And that's often community funded. So a lot of libraries pay into it, but also maybe a scholarly organisation pays into that model in order to enable anyone to publish open access on that website for free, on that publisher's website for free. So just to give you a little bit of an understanding of what a Creative Commons license is, because we've already discussed them, there is a video that can describe it way better than I can in words. So I'm just going to play that for a second. So the great news is that particular video was shared under a Creative Commons license. So it is free for me to share here. I understand that a couple of people struggled with the video, but I'm hoping that Jonathan's going to share the slides. I'll send them on so you can watch the video a little bit later. The key thing to know about Creative Commons licenses is that they make sharing work in a appropriate way very easy, and that it's always with a Creative Commons license you have to attribute the author, which therefore means that it sort of supports academic work because it's similar to referencing in a way that you're crediting the original essentially. So what does that mean in terms of open access? Well, articles that go on an institutional repository will usually be shared under a Creative Commons CC BY license, which is one of the more permissible ones that still requires attribution. So as I said before, what you do is you upload your author accepted manuscript to an institutional repository. The version of record is on the publisher's website, but people will need to pay to read it. It's often made accessible if on as close to publication if the institution has a scholarly works policy or rights retention. So it's known as a scholarly works policy at Bristol, but other universities call it rights retention policy. So that may be what it's called at your particular institution. It's key, really, if you're working with co-authors, that you communicate with them. So if somebody else is the kind of the lead author, make sure that you let them know that you want to have that version so that you can upload it on your institutional repository. And funders love green open access because it enables them to make their money go further. So you know, lots of major funders like UKRI, which I think most commonly for you as researchers will probably be ESRC, would probably be the council that you'd be most working with. Then they will love you putting things up green open access. If you are coming to the end of your doctoral research and you might be looking at a period where you're unaffiliated, then you can use something called Zenodo. And Zenodo is a repository which anyone can upload work to. But you should make sure that you check the JISC's Open Policy Finder, because you will have to respect embargoes, which a lot of journals will put an embargo in place to say that they wouldn't, that, you know, maybe you have to wait 6 months until you can put it up on an institutional repository. But most universities have a scholarly works policy or a rights retention scheme essentially say they have a prior contract with you. So it means that you can put that work up and they will make it accessible, open access, as soon as possible after publication. So it's all been checked by lawyers. So all you need to know is if you're doing it at a university through their institutional repository, your library team or whoever else looks after open access will look after that for you, but you just have to be a bit more careful if you're doing that yourself via something like Zenodo. Do the journals ever dispute the institutional rights retention? Very occasionally they do. But we've only had that at Bristol with a couple of publications, and so it's led to maybe five articles that haven't been made accessible at the point of publication in the last couple of years. So it is known practice. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, and just understand that, you know, your libraries are doing that. Do you have to notify them? In an ideal world, you should put a statement in your acknowledgements, but we have got in touch with most major funders, certainly at Bristol, and I'm sure that's the case with other institutions as well, to let them know that this is something we're doing. So they have been notified. There may be, if it's a very small publisher, there may be the case when they haven't been notified. But essentially, we go ahead, and if something needs to be taken down, it can be taken down. That's our backup position.
Sorry, Kate, we have a few questions in the Q&A box
sure.
as well. I wondered if you wanted to take them now. Or...
Sure.
Let's have a look. Can you see it?
Or let me
should I read
quick
that?
Look. Sorry. Let's have a look. Q&A. To understand, the uni libraries have deals agreements with certain deals. Yes, we're going to get onto the deals in a second. I have encouraged by a co-author on a research paper, not PhD, to put into a preprint with open science before submitting. So we at Bristol, we don't deal so much with preprints, but they are an open research practice, which we'll talk about a bit later. I mean, preprints, definitely think they're a great thing to do. So if that's something that you are being supported with by a co-author, I would definitely go ahead on doing that. For those of us who research SWTTB, ESRC government funding, have some requirements to publish work related to our PhD as open thesis. My question is, does this impact the journals we're able to publish in? Yes, it does. We'll kind of cover some of that in a second. So as I say, with green open access, if it's a hybrid journal, you can do green open access. So if you've got that mix of paywalled and free to read material, you can use this hybrid method to fulfill your ESRC's sort of requirements around open access. If open access is important, why then do we have institutions who do not really rate open access journals as good outlets? I would say institutions are often, like universities as a whole, will generally be supportive of open access journals, but you will probably, there is something in publishing where there are a number of what end up being known as prestige journals. And there've been a lot of initiatives to try and shake that up, because it has sometimes led to publishing practices that haven't really understood that what you need to be looking at is the quality of the research, not where it's published. And there is something called the Declaration on Research Assessment, I think it is. It's called DORA. It's also known as the San Francisco Declaration, which really pushes that we should be recognising both written outputs and practice research work as valuable as each other, and we should be thinking about the quality of the research rather than actually where something is put. So I would say there's a bit of the academic community needing to come together and really support more open access journals, because I personally think that they're good for the world. They're good for getting knowledge out there, and that's what I'm interested in, both as someone who was a researcher and also as someone who's an open access librarian. I will freely say that we are quite open access librarians, believe passionately in what we're doing. So my advice does come with that in mind. So in terms of somebody mentioned about the deals. So yes, there are two routes in order to for something to be paid for. It's either via a read and publish open access deal, or via paying an individual article processing charge. So read and publish can be a little bit, it can lead to misinterpretations of what is actually covered, because you shouldn't just assume that because you can read an article, read a particular journal, that means that you can publish open access in it. So make sure that you check the deals that are in place at your institution before you submit. And actually at the moment when you submit, and that will become relevant in a moment when I tell you about that. You'll find that they're mostly hybrid journals, which is why just because you can read it doesn't mean that you can publish in it, because you can read, anyone can read a gold open access journal, but you can't necessarily, it won't necessarily be covered in one of our deals with publishers. Make sure you check your university guidance and any tools that they have. So for instance, a number of universities have journal checker tools where you can just type the journal that you're interested in, the title in there, and that will then enable you to see if it's covered in one of the deals. What is covered is peer-reviewed original research. So that means that there may be some article types that aren't actually covered by a deal. So make sure that you find out about that as well. So for instance, a commentary might not be covered, but a journal article would. So that's sort of worth thinking about. You need to be the corresponding author, and you need to be using your university email address, because that university email address is how they know how to send it to be approved by a particular university. It's also worth checking if the journal has any hidden fees, because your open access deal covers the open access part, but there are a few journals which may charge things like page fees or color charges, and those won't be covered by a deal, and they can't be paid for by funders. So it's really worth checking for that. So unfortunately, if you're using a deal, you need to do a little bit of investigation on the website of the journal. It's a little bit simpler if you're in receipt of funding and therefore able to actually publish using an individual charge. So one of the reasons why this big red triangle has come up is because at the moment the UK higher education sector is currently in talks with publishers to try and make sure that we get better value for money. And that means that a number of deals may not be renewed by different universities when it comes to the 1st of January 2026. So that means that if you are about to submit something now, you should make sure that you should make sure that it is a hybrid journal, and that at that point you need to make sure that you actually upload your author accepted manuscript to your institution repository, regardless of whether there is a deal or not, because that will make sure that your work can be open access. So hopefully some of the answers to that renegotiation will come fairly soon, but that's just something to be aware of. And that's also why I say that, generally you should check when you submit if a deal is in place, and that you make sure that you don't just assume that because you published in that journal before open access that it will be now. Is there another question in there? Right. In that liminal space between graduating and being in academia, how can one source funding for publishing open access? The thesis is a monograph that has been approved by a publisher. So at the moment, we're very much talking about journal articles, and I'll come on to books in a minute. So in terms of individual article processing charges, the thing that you need to do is, in most cases, you will need to be funded by somebody like UKRI, Wellcome, British Heart Foundation, or Cancer Research UK. They're the major ones that give block grants to different institutions to administer. So you need to make sure you have that funding in place. You then need, and that you know where the money is going to come from for you to be able to pay that fee. Other funders like ERC, who are Horizon Europe and Marie Sklodowska-Curie fellowships, they often require you to have funding as part of your grant. So if you've got funding, make sure that you check the funder's website about how things become open access and whether open access is required. So that then, if you know that you can go ahead and make something open access in a gold-only journal where the only way to publish is to pay a fee, then check the directory of open access journals and look for an article processing fee. If you find an article processing fee there, that means it's a gold-only journal. And the good news about the directory of open access journals is that they also include, if there are any hidden fees, those fees that I talked about, the colour charges. So there's it's worth saying that there are significant amounts of money, individual article processing charges. The average is around about £2,000, but it can go up to £10,000. So you're talking a significant amount of money. So make sure that you know your route to open access before you actually submit to a journal, and that you feel confident about how it's going to be made open access. There are other models. So as I said, there's the diamond model, which has no author fee associated with it. There are some diamond publishers out there. These are the two I've listed here, actually more kind of arts and humanities ones, which are Punctum Press and Media Studies Press. But you will be able to, if you search, if you sort of search for diamond publishers, you should be able to find a few listed. There's also another mode which is subscribe to open journals. So that means that if enough libraries subscribe to that particular journal a year, or a certain amount of the back catalogue may become open access. So it can lead to some years being open access and some years not being open access, which is why I've kind of described the problem as it can be a bit like open access yo-yo. So I would recommend that if you're interested in a subscribe to open journal, it's a great thing to support, but I would also suggest that maybe you ensure that you're putting something up on an institutional repository as well. So actually, I will get to that question about monographs in a minute, but at the moment I'm wondering, would you mind putting the first poll out there, please, Jonathan? So this is for you to think about. If you read each of these different titles, with something being free open access, full access, and open access, please select any of the options that you think are gold open access on the publisher's website. Right. Got a few more responses coming in. So I think we've stayed. Oh no, we've got a few more coming in. So essentially, those of you who spotted open access, yes, open access is exactly what it says on the tin. It is, if you see those words open access, then that means that it is a gold open access journal. However, unfortunately, free access is not open access. It's often bronze open access, which is where the publisher makes it temporarily available. A lot of that happened during the COVID pandemic, where publishers made that work open for a short period of time. Full access, sadly, that's your browser recognizing your institutional logon, so it's actually paid for by subscription. Where it says open access, it is actually open access. So look for those specific words in order to make sure that you're looking for the right thing. So what do we think about this one? Would you mind putting the poll for this one as well, please? So have a little check of the wording on here and let me know if you think that this is open access. Excellent. Yes, you're absolutely right. Those of you who have said yes. This is green open access. It is where you find it on an institutional repository. So this is what it looks like on the University of Bristol's institutional repository. So as I say, we think gold and green are both wonderful ways to make your work open access. So what about these as different ways of accessing materials that are open access? What do people think about these? Do you actually, I realise I've caused a little bit of a problem here. So select any of these. Oh, the poll blocks the images. Okay. So the different, okay, well, let's cancel that for a moment. Essentially, none of these methods are ways of making work open access. The logon acts as a barrier to access on something like academic social networks, such as academia.edu. My apologies, I had actually created a problem with the poll. I didn't give you the option of none of the above. So I think I cancelled the poll a little quickly on that. The preprints are also unlikely to be are not going to be open access because the text is likely to be amended following peer review. So those of you who work in fields where preprints are common, preprints are where you upload your article before submission and you get a lot of feedback from the academic community. If you emailed on request is also, the issue is the request is actually an access barrier. So you have to remember that with open access, you need to actually be able to freely and easily access the materials. It's not just about it being on the internet, it's about no barriers to access. So this is where we get onto books and chapters. Different funders have different policies. So if you are UKRI funded, then there is a two-stage process that's administered by universities, and your book can be made open access if it's a book. And for a book chapter, that's also the case. But there are limits on how much the funder will pay. So for instance, UKRI pay up to £10,000, including VAT, which works out as around £8,333.33. excluding VAT, and so you need to make sure it comes in line with that, and it's £1,000 including VAT for a book chapter, which is about £833. But that is specific to UKRI. Wellcome will also pay books, but they have a different system. So make sure you understand what the system is in place. If you're unfunded, then it's a lot harder. You'll find that most publishers will allow you to make a portion of the work open access, but not the whole thing. Although some university presses are very good, and after a couple of years, the whole book can become open access. So make sure you talk to your publisher about what their green open access fees are if you're not in receipt of UKRI funding or Wellcome funding that enables you to make the whole work available. Actually, I believe Wellcome funding, doctoral research isn't necessarily made open access as a book. So that's another sort of instance where you need to check what they're prepared to pay for and what they're not prepared to pay for. So if you want to make the whole book open access, then it may be best to try and track down a diamond publisher. So in terms of what funders want, make sure that you credit your funder with your grant number and include a data access statement. So a data access statement might be, as simple as no new data was created in this project, but it might also be it might sort of be a specific link to data that you have made publicly available. I will nod sort of some training about that you can access that is future via the Southwest Doctoral Training Partnership that my colleague Jade is going to be running. If there's no obvious place to include this information, make sure that you put it in the acknowledgements. So I like to think of open access as a communication of how it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So if you're thinking about where else you want to, other aspects of publishing, where do people you respect publish? That's one route that I went to thinking of an appropriate journal when I published one of my early articles. I didn't personally have a journal that I regularly read, but if there's one that you regularly read, that's a good indication that your work might fit there. We've also got, if it's a book, who are you publishing alongside? So again, my choice was to publish where the person who was most cited in my field had published their book, and that's where I chose to publish, which I felt was appropriate. There's also a process of that is often recommended, which is think, check, submit, which will give, if you look at the information that's provided there, you'll find out a bit more about that. I'm generally a bit skeptical about generic invitation emails. You'll often find that you receive a high number of those as you get on, and sometimes your work doesn't really seem to fit in there. So if it doesn't seem to fit in there, I would indicate it's not really a good place to publish. If it just looks like a really generic email of, oh, this article, read this article, and we think you should publish something with our random book, it's probably not going to be a good publication location for your work. So I would also recommend that you get yourself an ORCID ID. It's a unique ID that travels with you. It appears on publications, and it can give you a wide amount of visibility of other types of entries, such as database entries. I've got a very common name, so on that basis, there are 3 other Dr Kate Holmeses on ORCID, which means there's more out there. So it helps people to be able to locate my work easily, and it can save time on funding and job applications. So briefly nodded to open research. So open research is a whole set of different practices where openness is used to enhance research culture and the quality of research through transparency and accessibility. The whole idea about it is about sort of thinking about how openness can actually lead to research and society working more effectively to combat different problems. If we look at the different practices that are in place, their research data management is a key one of those, which, as I say, my colleague Jade is going to be running some training on, which is really about, it enables you to make your research data freely available. If that is relevant, there are different access controls if that's not suitable for your research. On that basis, you actually get publications out of your research data. So those publications are important to put on your CV. Pre-registration and registered reports are where, for instance, you register your method and sort of achieve a publication through that, or you essentially you say that you are going to you get in touch with a journal and you say that this is what you are going to, the experiment you're going to run, and regardless of the of whether it's a successful experiment or not, your findings will be published. Preprints we've already talked about a little bit earlier. Open code and software is essentially what it says on the tin, and this session has had a lot about open access. But also those authorship tools like ORCID are part of making work open and transparent. The credit taxonomy is also a method for ensuring that people get correct authorship in work. So if you're working with a large team, taking a look at the credit taxonomy can be a really great way to make sure that everybody is appropriately recognised for the work that they've done on a publication. And that recognises that in the past, maybe crediting of authors hasn't been as transparent and equitable as it should have been. So the training that I can recommend with Jade is What is Research Data? Practical Guidance on Organising and Sharing Files and Findings, which will be on the 20th of January over lunchtime. So I really hope that you are able to attend that and to learn more about what your data is and how you can achieve publications through it. And I'm sorry that was a little bit of a rush towards the end. Are there any further questions? I think there might be. Are there?
There may have been one more that came
right
through. Let's have a look.
For those journals, we need to pay an APC fee to publish as open access. Do we apply to the Southwest Doctoral Training Partnership for funding? Oh, it's directly to the university, but not to the department. It would generally be your library who would administer that process, I believe. Sorry, Jade, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just saying that I've answered
I've
answered a few of them. So.
Oh, amazing! Thank you. Oh, brilliant! Thank you, Jade. So does my apologies that we're just past midday. If anyone has a couple of minutes, I'm happy to answer a couple of other things. But I think Jade has probably covered all of the questions for me, I think.
Can I just say, sorry, I'm Angeline Barrett, the Deputy Director of the SWDTP, and I just wanted to extend our thanks to you, Kate, for this really popular presentation. There's obviously a huge demand for more knowledge in this area. Jonathan, will you be sending a feedback form?
Yeah, so I've just put a feedback form in the Q&A as a discussion. In that, there is also an opt-in to hear more about our upcoming data analysis webinar series. Jade's session is actually kickstarting that. So you'll find both links in the discussion session there for you.
I'm so sorry about the technical issues in there. I don't quite know what happened with those slides. So my apologies for that.
No, we're sorry too that it's gone this way. It is new functions, I think.
Yes, I think it might be new functions.
But anyway, thank you very much to everyone who has attended. I think people are logging off anyway. If you do have questions that you'd like to stay behind to ask, we're here for another few minutes. But otherwise, thank you all for joining us today.